already. So, Maguette, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're very, very happy that you share this last part of the day with the Naturgas community. It's been a long day, but I think it's the best way to close a learning day for our community. And I would like to begin this conversation with you asking, given that you have been a migrant at your earliest stage in life, you migrated to Germany with your family from Senegal and then to France. Why don't you tell us your journey and how did you become an entrepreneur, becoming a migrant?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Lustella. It is a pleasure to be here. And Naturgas, thanks for having me again. I guess the best way to answer your question, Juan, is I'm just going to tell you how my story went. My story is very much the story that probably many Colombians will resonate with. So I was born in Senegal, the west coast of Africa, and right around age 2, my parents looked at me and figured that the best thing that they could do for me would be to leave me, to go away from me and migrate to Europe. And they did that because they were on their way to a better life for me. Because back home, the circumstances did not allow them to do that. So imagine looking at your child. Who here has children? Imagine 2 years old or grandkids, right? And your decision you make is you're going to leave and you don't know if you're ever going to see them again. But you know it is the best decision for them. That's what so many African parents before my parents had to do, and so many African parents to this day have to do. Thank you. And so that's pretty much how it started. So my parents left, and they left me in the care of my grandmother. And some 5 years later, they came back for me, because the emigration journey had worked, so they came to get me. And at that point, I remember it was the first time I had to leave my country. I had to leave my grandmother, who had become my caretaker, and they sent me off on this journey. I don't know where I was going. It was one of the most traumatic experiences, as you can imagine. And, but I remember, when I arrived in Germany, I looked around, and I'm thinking to myself, how come they have this and we don't? And really, back then, all I was talking about was, how come back home, when Grandma says, Maguette, it's time for your shower, then I know that I have a good 45 minutes to an hour, Juan, to go play some more. Why? Because Grandma had to get a stove of coal going. Then we put a pot of water on it, wait for it to boil. Then we put it into a bigger bucket, mix it with cold water, and then someone stronger than Grandma would have to drag it to the shower area. And there, at last, some 45 minutes to an hour later, I can proceed to take my shower. I am sure many people here to this day, probably that's how they bathe. So you have to put yourself in my shoes. I'm this little 7-year-old girl now, and I'm looking around, and then here in Germany, Mom says, Maguette, it's time for you to take your shower. And I'm like, oh, I am not getting butt naked in this cold weather. Where is the bucket of water? And my grandma says, and my mom says, come on, you silly, just jump in the shower. And then I go in there, I turn the knobs, the water is coming down at the temperature that I want, the pressure that I want, and I'm just thinking to myself, wait a second. There's something really weird going on here. Who is hiding behind doing this? It was insane. But you know, it was like that about everything. It was like that about the grocery stores, where we had more types of apples and bread that my little brain could count. It was like that about the paved roads. Everything about this place seemed so different from my country. And then I asked myself, how come they have this and we don't? And eventually that question, with time, because it really became the defining question of my life. You know how kids, sometimes they have this question and they're just obsessed with it? That was me. I needed to know, because the difference was too big. And the question eventually became, how come some countries like mine and so many in Africa and in the global south are poor, while nations like the US, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, are rich? What is going on? Everywhere I would go, I would try to see if I could find the answer. Every book I read, every show I watch, everything. And I've heard it all. Starting with, oh, darling, it's not your fault. It's because, you know, blacks and browns are just not as smart as white people. They say that about you too. And I hear people saying, oh, it's because of racism, it's because of colonialism, it's because Africans have low IQ, it's because Africans are lazy. I hear it all. But you know what, Juan? None of that makes sense. Do you know why?
Why?
Let's take the colonialism part. Because many in Africa like to say, oh, Africa is poor today because of colonialism, the colonialism we had to go through. And I said, not so fast. Because if colonialism was a reason why we're still poor, how come you explain to me why Ethiopia, which has never been colonized, for the longest time was a poster child for poverty in Africa? Conversely, you have countries like Botswana that have been colonized, and for the longest time have been some of the best performers on the continent. So that colonialism stuff makes no sense. Then take the IQ thing, take the lazy thing. You're talking about the same people. If that is true, how come the same people, the minute they cross over to Europe, all of a sudden they can self-actualize?
But before we can go into the detail about the opportunity,
Yeah.
let me just wrap up some of what you just told us about your experience, because it resembles to what happens probably to 8.5 million people still in Colombia that lived in energy poverty. If you go into the detail of what the monetary poverty index in Colombia is, it's about 27 to 29%. But energy poverty affects 16.5% of Colombians who every morning do not have access or quality energy at their households. And they have to go either to grab wood, do not have hot water to have a bath, that's even worse in the cold weather in our mountains in Colombia, and, or do not have electricity for solving other needs. So I do believe that in terms of poverty, people experiencing poverty, we have a similar case, probably not at as large in amount in figures as you have in some places in Africa, or in some countries in Africa, but in Colombia we still have a big percentage of Colombians, 16.5, living in energy poverty. So let's go to the reasons that during your journey you thought and found about why some countries in Africa were poor, either if they were colony or not colony.
That's right.
Go ahead.
That's right. Yeah, so going back to the, them saying it's because of the IQ or whatever, I say the same people, when they move, all of a sudden their value increases, and we know that. The minute somebody from Mexico crosses the border from Mexico to the US, all of a sudden the value of their work is multiplied by 10. So in any case, I'm looking at all of this and I'm thinking to myself, this is not about the person per se. This is not about the colonialism thing you're talking to me about. I'm looking at this equation and I'm seeing that the only variable in it is the place. The place. What is it about these places that when you're there, you can make it, or when you're there, you can't make it? What is it? What is it that if you're from Colombia, chances are you might need to migrate? Or when you're from anywhere in Africa, chances are you might need to migrate. And when you're in the US or when you're in France or places like that, the only time you migrate, you don't migrate because of hunger, but you migrate because of taste. What is it? And eventually, I kept on with my little journey. Family moved away from Germany to France. France is where I was educated for most of my life. After business school in France, I decided that France would be too small for my ambitions. So I packed up my bags and I left for the one country that everybody said, this is the land of opportunity, namely the United States of America. So I moved to the US. And there I became a headhunter in finance, working for companies like Google and Netflix before they became household name brands in Silicon Valley. And I was doing extremely well for myself. I was not even, I was not even 23, I think, back then. And already I had bought this amazing house in the most expensive zip code in America. And I say this to you because it has an importance of my story. Here I was, living my American dream. And one day I was in my car, driving down on Highway 1 to Big Sur, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And it was one of those moments when I was having such joy about and feeling so much gratitude for everything that God had afforded me, obviously through people helping me. And that day, though, as with any time when I feel good about myself and how far I've come, the very next second, it's like a switch goes off in my brain, and everything goes dark. And as it goes dark, you have this big pain that comes down. And you know what that pain is all about? It's about the people that I have left back home. It's about these stories of people who pack themselves into little fishermen's boats trying to cross to Europe in search for a job. Oftentimes, the boat is going to tip. It's the stories of bodies that drop off an airplane on their way to migrating to Europe for a job, and somewhere above England, a body drops. It's the story of people who, when they say, sea route is too dangerous, air route is too dangerous, let us go land route. They go land route. Do you know what happens to us when we do land route? Most of the time we get stuck in Libya. And when you are stuck in Libya, you are sold as a slave. Right now, in 2025, there are people like me in Libya who have been sold as slaves, and my cost is literally between $300 and $500. I am haunted, Juan. I'm haunted. I say this to people. They don't understand, but I'm haunted. So every moment that I start to feel good about myself and what I've been able to accomplish, you think about these stories, you think about these people. And I refuse to believe that I'm better than them. There's something else going on. So I go on with my life. That day, I almost had an accident because my body was literally jerking. I was in such pain. And I got out of the car as soon as I could. I literally fell to my knees because in my body there was no more energy. I literally fell to my knees. And my only reflex was to surrender to God and say, God, from here on, everything that I will do will be to the betterment of my people. I don't know what to do, but you're going to have to show me the way. And the way he showed me. A few months later, after that happened, I went home for the first time, for the longest time. I've never been away from home for more than a year. But that time it was 4 years I've been gone away because of immigration. Anyway, I arrive home and I look around and I see all of these people. And you're gonna have some to your answer, Juan, when you said, "What made you become an entrepreneur?" It's coming right now. I go home and I realize that this hibiscus drink that I grew up with as a child was disappearing because everybody thinks it's better to consume Western brands. You see, those of us who are in cultures that have been traditionally dominated, we have this tendency of having low self-esteem about who we are and what is indigenous to us. And we were doing the same thing to ourselves. So you were seeing people, women especially, losing their livelihoods, moving away from the countryside where they were growing the hibiscus and going to the city side. And so I was really upset about that because they were getting into bigger cycles of poverty. And so at that moment, that with what my father always said, criticize by creating, I decided to answer the problem of people losing their livelihood by creating a brand for which the product would be this beverage company that eventually we put 9,000 women back to work. And
How
the
many?
product, 9,000. And the product was being sold in the US in some of the most prestigious grocery store chains in America. And that's how I started my first company.
In the US?
In the US.
Not back in Senegal?
But no, we had two sister companies. So we had one sister company in the US in charge of retail, R&D, distribution and all of that. And then back home, we had the company that was taking care of all types of supply chain management and things of that nature. And it is when I did that, when I started that first company, because by now I've built 3 companies, and I'm also working on my next one, which is the 4th one. So when I built that first company, oh, Juan, I could not help but be flabbergasted by the discrepancy of the ease of doing business. Get this. In my country, it took me almost 2 years to get the company legally registered. In America, it took me less than half a day. In my country, it would take, the government gets to decide if I can hire you, Juan, or not, and at what price. Same thing when I need to get rid of you.
But before we go into the struggles of setting up the companies, we could say that your spirit or your focus on entrepreneurship came about in the identification of specific needs that you thought existed in your home country, original country in Senegal, compared to what you saw in the US, Germany, or France, correct?
Yes, yes. So I'm glad you're bringing this up, because too often, especially in countries like ours, Perhaps you in this room are a self-selected group of people who love entrepreneurship, love business, and you think it's a good thing. But too often, sadly, in the global south, people have a suspicious attitude towards business. And I don't really blame them, because oftentimes in our countries, the most successful business people that we also see what? That they have friends in government. And then we look at this and we think that this is what doing business is. But we're here to tell you that that is what we call crony business. It's not right that you should know somebody in government for you to be able to do business. It should be that anybody, a little Juan in the middle of nowhere, Colombia, right? Or Maria in the middle of nowhere, Colombia, should be able, if you or she has a great idea and is willing to work for it, it should be just so easy for you to start your business and do it. But right now, it is not like that in our countries.
No, I think it could be a very big difference between the global south and some developed countries like the US, where the ease of doing business is much easier. Setting up a company takes probably hours.
Now it's 20 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on how fast you type.
While in many of the developing countries, it could take months.
Months, years.
Or you need political context to...
There you go, there you go. And so when I saw this, oh wait, why is it so easy to do business in America and so hard to do business in my country? I thought, oh, it's because we're poor, that's why it's so hard. And it's because we're rich, that's why it's so easy. Well, think a second. You're poor because you don't have enough money. You don't have enough money because you don't have a source of income. A source of income for most of us is a job, isn't it? Where do jobs come from? Businesses, the private sector. Do you really think that the private sector and businesses happen in a vacuum? Do you? I'm here to tell you it doesn't. Just like for anything that you want to be born and to grow, you need what? A fertile soil. And in economy, we call that the economic freedom. How free is one to enterprise or not? For those of you who have heard it, we also call it the doing business environment. Okay? So the problem is when you look there, you realize economic index after economic index after economic index, you realize that it is in poor nations that it is the hardest to start and run a business. And right there, Juan, I had my answer. And when it comes to that, it's even worse for Africa. Africa is a region in the world that has the worst business environments. So there, at last, I had my answer.
But
we are poor.
Let me jump in here, because if we were to ask you, according to your experience, setting up the first 3 companies in the US versus Africa and your home country, Senegal, how do you see the role of government policy in enabling or making business growth?
That's exactly what we're talking about right now. What all of these economic indexes look at is how easy or hard it is to start and run a business anywhere in the world. You have a Doing Business Index ranking of the World Bank, that was before they yanked it. You have a Fraser Economic Freedom Index ranking as well, and you have many of them. And what they all do is measure how easy or hard it is to start and run a business. And systematically, we find that actually African nations are the ones where it's the worst to start and run a business. Now Juan, you're going to ask me, why is that? Why is that? I will tell you why that is. When you run on Marxist, socialist ideologies, you have nothing to show for when it comes to showing for prosperity. And this is something that very few people know when it comes especially to the African continent. My continent is the poorest region in the world. Do you know why? This didn't happen just out of nowhere. I will take you back a little bit in history. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, when we were at the height of the ideological battle, between freedom on one end, represented by the West, and practicing capitalism as its economic system, facing off with the East, where people were practicing various forms of statism, those 2 blocks were fighting with each other. But during that time, if you know your history a little bit, remember, during that time, almost all intellectuals were Marxist socialists. And also you have to understand, us Africans were just about to come out of colonialism. So as we were about to be liberated nations, we looked around and we see this battle going between these 2 blocks. And they're asking us to make a choice. Well, we're looking at the West, and we're thinking, wait a second, you are the ones who colonized us, so surely whatever that is that you're doing, we're just not going to do. So this is when most African nations, at the time of liberation, sided with the Marxist socialists of their time. And we have never re-evaluated that. And my message for many of you in this room today is, and for those of you who are outside of these rooms, is we complain about colonialism, or we complain about what happened during the times we didn't own ourselves. And we think it's all over. Go back. Open all of your, starting with all of your laws. Open everything. Start looking. It is still there. The fact that our people cannot enterprise. English is my fourth language. The fact that our people cannot, enterprise.
Yeah.
It's in there. It's in these laws and policies. So just to put it bluntly to you, our nations are poor. Our nations are not as prosperous as they could be prosperous. It's because we are over-regulated. And another thing is also because we have not done our job when it comes to the right energy mix that we need to have as well. I put it very simply. My recipe for human flourishing comes with 2 ingredients and 2 ingredients alone. First one is freedom, especially the freedom for entrepreneurs to enterprise, called economic freedom. Second recipe is affordable, reliable, abundant energy sources. And it has to be all 3 together. We know that nations that don't have economic freedom are poor. And we know that there is also no nation that is energy poor that is rich. So what are we waiting for? I see us.
May I jump in?
Please.
There? Yeah, because I want to associate or relate those 2 issues that you just jumped up with an example that you have in your book, which is The Spirit of African Entrepreneurship, where you use a leopard as a reference in the book. And why do you choose the leopard as a reference? Because it needs to be fed.
Why do I choose?
It's free, yeah. Why did you choose specifically the leopard?
I'm not hearing well. What did I choose?
The leopard.
Oh, but it's not a leopard. It's a cheetah.
It's a cheetah. Sorry.
It's a cheetah. Cheetah and leopard are not the same.
Yeah, sorry.
Anyway, my book is called The Heart of a Cheetah: How We Have Been Lied to About African Poverty and What It Means for Human Flourishing. I chose the cheetah in honor of my beloved professor, George Aite. He was a Ghanaian economist. And the reason why I call him my beloved professor, he's my intellectual father, one of my intellectual fathers. What I love about George is George was one of the few people, when it came to talking about poverty in Africa and why that was the case, he's the only one, especially in his time, that had looked into all of this. He's the one who put his finger on the fact that we are poor today because we're overregulated, basically. And that is also due to the fact that during liberation, most of the African presidents of the time were Marxist socialists, various levels. And that has followed us to this day in showing for the poverty that we have. So that, and George has said, he had a famous TED talk called Hippos versus Cheetahs. And he said, the future of Africa lies on the back of the cheetahs. The hippos are this old guard of people, primarily in government, and they suck the life out of everything, and they're just standing in the way and benefiting from the status quo. They're these fat animals in the middle of the water and not wanting to get out of the way. But he said, don't be worried. The cheetahs are the fast runners of Africa. He said the cheetahs is this new generation of Africans that are going to wait for no one. We're going to wait for no one. We're not going to wait for the government. We're not going to wait for the IMF. We're not going to wait for the World Bank. We're going to wait for no one. We're going to get up and do it because that's what entrepreneurs do. And so that's why it's called the cheetahs. And George said that the future of Africa lies on our backs. And he called me one of the original cheetahs. And he said, run, cheetahs, run. You will be the ones who can change this. And that's exactly what we believe, and that's what we're doing. So this book is devoted to all the cheetahs and also to George, because we lost him a couple years ago. But I believe our time has come. So that's where the name comes from.
So let me ask you now, after you set up these businesses and your experience as an entrepreneur, what are your thoughts on how the private sector could be more effective in its contribution to reducing poverty?
I mean, the private sector, if you're already a business, you are contributing to the problem. I mean, to solving the problem. When you're a business and you're hiring people and you're buying from suppliers and you're bringing goods that your customers want and you're doing good in the community and where you are, I mean, what else do you want to do? This is why I really think it's important for people to remember that for the most part, entrepreneurs are those who criticize by creating. We see something that doesn't work and we do something about it. So for me, the only way to solve poverty is going to be through entrepreneurship, because when you think about it, poverty is solved by prosperity, not by poverty alleviation. That's another message that if I can leave any message to you, it's that. Because the Western world has gotten us used to being satisfied with simply poverty alleviation. I am not going to be happy just being a little bit less poor. Thank you very much. I want to be prosperous. So poverty is solved by prosperity. Prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. But we have to let entrepreneurs work, which means we have to put in place a good business environment and also unleash the energy. Affordable, reliable, abundant.
In the business literature, there's this famous phrase about the death valley for entrepreneurs. Yeah, usually it takes place after year 4, year 5, when they've taken up a business, and most of the business die 90% in year 4 or year 5. Can you share a moment of failure or challenge that significantly shaped your journey? And in these 3 businesses that you have ongoing now, maybe made you think twice if you should continue or not with those businesses?
That moment happens almost every other day. But the one that marked me the most, I have to say, and I talk about it in the book, it's my first company. When I created it, I first was the one who started it. And then eventually I thought to myself, hey, it would be good for me to find a business partner, somebody who has a little bit more experience with all of this, because I've never built a business before. I had no idea what manufacturing would take, especially across borders and all of that stuff. So I decided I would need a partner so that I don't have to recreate the wheel and I can build from there. And I did a little chart of who would be this person. And there's a name that kept popping up, and his name was Greg Stelton Paul. He happened to be the gentleman who founded Odwalla. I don't know if you guys knew Odwalla here, but eventually at some point, Odwalla got sold to Coca-Cola for $180 million. So it was a big brand in the US, and So anyway, so that's who I went. The gentleman who founded that company, I went and I picked him out of retirement to come and be my co-founder, so that we could build this beverage business together. And eventually, things were going really well, and his wife started doing some marketing work with us as well. She was from France. And they were also people who could literally be my parents. They were much older than me and all of that. So as soon as we raised our first Series A round of financing, we had raised $2 million to start with. By the time that first company was finished, we had raised $32.5 million. But we started with raising $2 million. I only wanted $1 million, but then it was oversubscribed, so we ended up with $2 million the first time. And every time we went back to look for money, we always bring back more. But so things started right there. As soon as we signed the term sheet, the money was coming in, then boom, my first husband passes away. That was really hard, and it really threw me off. But I knew that the only way I could stay in the game was if I kept working. If I stopped working, I knew that I would fall. I would lose it. So I kept working. And, but one thing leading to another, this couple, Greg and his wife, became almost like my parents. And I look around at some point and I said, hey, look, guys, it's not fair that I have most of the shares. How about we divide it up in three parts, equal parts? And they said, oh, it's great, but perhaps you get the 10% for recognizing that you're the founder. So which means I ended up with 40%, the husband with 30, and the wife with 30. So what does it come to? 40 for Magat, 60 for them together. Who is majority here? Isn't it them? And the board was only the 3 of us. And for those of you who maybe are not in business, you have to understand that the ultimate boss, besides the customers in a business, is the board. The board gets to fire the CEO. The board gets to decide at the end of the day what happens in a company. So you see where this is going. One day, we had this big production, and we just had produced $500,000 worth of goods, and I had already pre-sold everything, because I was the main salesperson in the company. I had pre-sold everything to the grocery stores. People were waiting with a new line. And then I got a phone call on a Friday afternoon. What they say to you is very true. If you have a company, never pick up the phone on a Friday afternoon. It's always going to be bad news that you cannot fix, and you're going to be stressing the whole weekend. And well, of course, I picked up the phone. Well, there's a problem. I'm like, what's going on? Well, some of the bottles are cracking. So right here, these are glass bottles, right? Some of the bottles at this level were cracking. And if you see one of those, you have to stop everything. Because now you have to try to find out how many of the bottles are affected. What percentage are we talking about? And at that point, there is a percentage under which you might be fine, but another one where no. This is going to have to be all thrown away. But around that time, I was also having issues with my co-founder, because a lot of our employees were not happy. I was mostly on the road all the time. And so by that time, I had come to the conclusion that my co-founder was probably not the best CEO, and we needed to change that. He was the CEO, I was the president. I called some of my investors to talk to them and ask them to come and see if they saw what I saw. And they came back and they said, Magat, it's bad. He's not a good CEO, and we're going to have to remove him. That was hard. But anyway, the reason why I talk about that is because when these things were cracking, he said, well, it's fine, we can still probably sell them. And I said, there's no way I'm releasing this thing until I know better, until I know more. Because you have to understand, Juan, babies were drinking our juice. Moms trusted us with this juice. Okay? There's no way I'm going to take the risk for a little shard of glass to go through and then slice the artery or something in the child. No way. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So that was a big fight we had. And at that point, that's when the argument came out in the open, that I was not happy with him as a CEO. And then eventually, at that point, I found myself, one thing leading to another, I found myself kicked out of my company. So basically, I had to stay at home, and I had to hire my own lawyer while they still were allowed to be in the company. Why? Because he's a CEO. Now I was an entrenched president. So I was kicked out. I had to work from outside, hire my own lawyer, a litigator. We're talking about a litigator in Silicon Valley. I had to hire one of the best. And fight my own people in my own company. It lasted for quite a while. And what was a saving grace, I still don't know who did this. But on the day when we had to go in front of the judges, I open my door the day before, and I see literally a brown envelope on the doorstep. And that brown envelope had everything that I needed to win this battle, because we were involved in a proxy battle. So you have to understand this was proxy battles are the battles you do not want to have when you are a CEO or a president. When you have a company, proxy battles are the most nasty battles, legal battles that you can ever be involved in, to be avoided at all costs. But that's what I got baptized with in the world of business. So that one was my hardest one to this day. If you want to know more about what goes on and how it all happened, I explain it very well in the book. But bottom line is, never have husband and wife on a board, especially if it's only the three of you on that board. That's what I learned.
And how was the problem of the bottle solved?
The problem with the bottle, I decided that we would sit on it. So basically what we did is we called the bottles, they delivered them to us, they came to our warehouse, and there what we did is we started using them for tastings. But the thing is, when you do tastings, you can tell, you can inspect them, and if there's nothing, you can use it, but if you see it, you just throw it away. So we didn't sell them. We can just use them that way. Because for me, it's important to have integrity in the business. Okay. I mean, you should not wait for one person to lose their life to start thinking about, oh, well, was it worth it? It's never worth it. Don't even take that risk. Money is replaceable. People are not.
Integrity and good governance, hopefully from day one.
From day one. from day one. And if you don't know, and that's another thing, I see so many people signing all types of things. They send you an NDA, you sign it. They send you a contract, you sign it. So many people are just maybe happy to have a job or whatever. It's fine if you're going to be an employee, it's fine, maybe do that. I still don't recommend that. Learn to read your contracts. If you don't know how to read your contract, go get somebody who knows how to read a contract. You don't want to find out what is it that you signed when it's too late.
You've provided very valuable advice to entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs in Senegal, in different African countries worldwide. What advice would you give to Colombian entrepreneurs trying to build globally competitive brands?
Yeah. The good news here, guys, is I don't know, anybody here has heard about the cultural creative demographic? These are the best, if you're going to be in the world of building brands, and consumer packaged goods, these are going to be the customers for you to really pay attention to. They're the customers who basically, everything that they do, when they buy your product, is all based on ethics. When they buy your products, they're focused on those of you who are conscious capitalists, who are running conscious businesses. What we believe, because I'm a conscious capitalist, what we believe as a conscious capitalist is a business has a set of stakeholders and not just the shareholders. Your stakeholders are going to be your employees, your customers, your suppliers, the community in which the business is operating, as well as your shareholders, of course. And whenever you're going to go make a major decision, it better be a win-win-win-win among all stakeholders. If not, it's a no-go. And we know that when you do that, actually, you are way more performing than the conventional ones who thinks business is all about profit maximization. I have this fight with people all the time, especially hardcore business people who think I'm just being an emotional woman talking about business. No, it's the smart thing to do, to be a conscious business person. And it makes sense. Makes sense. When everyone wins, you win more. It just makes sense. So try to apply that in what you do. In what you do. So that's what I would recommend to you. And when it comes to that, you surely have amazing oils for your hair. You surely have amazing, ingredients that can be put into lotions, beverages that people have been drinking, that we know have great health benefits. Try to look and dig deep into your culture. Go back and bring back all of these riches from your culture, because that's what this cultural creative demographic is looking for. They have the money. All they want from you is authenticity, is good products built under great condition, where you take good care of the people that you're interacting with every single day, all those stakeholders that I talked about. Focus on that. Don't try to be copycat of anything that's outside of these doors. Be you. That's how I won. I'm building my third company right now. The fourth one has nothing to do with the other ones. The fourth one right now is I'm basically building cities in Africa. That's what I'm doing right now. But the first three companies were consumer packaged goods companies. And I brought a beverage to America that America didn't have, but definitely loved, wanting to have. And my second company was a skincare company, and the third one is also skincare. And I only go after some of our best ingredients and things that the West doesn't really have, and traditions that they don't know about, but we know that they like. If you play that game, you will win. I can guarantee you that, because that's how we won. And so that's what you've got. You've got something that they want. So stop being wannabes, this or that, and be proud of who you are. Be proud of your culture. One thing that I learned when my first husband passed away, by the way, as soon as he passed away, my elders called me back home to Senegal, because they did not want me to start taking antidepressants and all of that, which is actually what my doctor was starting to prescribe to me. And they said, you need to come home. And I went home. And they said, this is a tragedy. When you go to the Western world, the one thing that they never teach you about, which is the most important thing to learn, is how to die. To remember that you're going to die, and also to embrace it, to prepare for it. The one only thing we know for sure in this world is the minute you're born, you're automatically walking towards your death. And that's a beautiful thing. We hope it comes as late as possible, but that is the only certainty we have. Then why is it that in the West we have this aversion to death, and we're so scared of it, and we never want to talk about it, we don't get ready for it, so when it happens, we don't know what to do? Well, in this case, my elders called me back, and they do what they do. I got called to the village, and their elders took care of me. And every day, they would talk to me. And they fed me with really good organic food that they were growing themselves. My body was being revitalized, my mind, everything. They would talk to me. There was no taboos about anything. And after a month, I was able to get back on that plane and go back and fight. And I know a lot of people who have been widows. I was a young widow. I was a widow at 29. But you see, even that way of approaching death, I think it would be important to take to the outside world. And we have so much of it, because the way we care for people, in the global south, that's something that we still have. It's still very intact. That's what you have. So from everything that you're using, whether you're drinking it, you're eating it, you're putting it in your hair, whatever, or just the way you approach family, the way you approach friends, the way you approach death, the way you approach birth, all of that, the West is in dear, dear need of relearning. And we can bring that to them. Build a business around that, and you will be successful.
And how would your advice be different if this auditorium was only filled with women?
It's always hard for me to talk about just women versus men, because that's another thing. I think the West has gone wrong with how they view feminism. Feminism should not be women cut men's balls. Excuse my terms here. That's not what it should be. A woman should not have to cut a man's parts in order to feel her strength and to exude her strength. Men and women are just that, men and women. We have our differences, thank God. We have our strengths and we have our weaknesses, and hopefully they're not the same, so that we can be these complementary units that God intended for us to be. So for me, whenever I talk about women alone, just men, don't think that I'm ostracizing you. It's not coming from there. But now if I must address the ladies and the ladies alone, my biggest thing is going to be accept your feminine way of being strong. I see too many mutants out there. I call them mutants. Women who think that the way to be a strong woman is to, in a way, copy a strong man. I don't know if you see it, but that's not a good thing. So what I would say is just embrace who you are. You see, me, when I go on stages, sometimes they're like, "You're Spain." Yeah, because I'll show up and I have a red top, yellow pants and red shoes. Yeah, who cares? And then all the men over there may be 7 of them, they're all wearing like black suits. You have to be confident in who you are. The one thing that's going to get you far in this world is confidence. But confidence cannot be faked. That's why when you have it, you win. And the only way to have it is to embrace who you are, all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. By now, I've decided that, you know what? I'm not going to change for nobody or for nothing. Don't mind me, though. I want to be a good person. So that fight is always with me, but it's not with others. So I would encourage you to be confident. And being confident doesn't mean you're perfect. You're not perfect. Being confident just means you're showing up with who you are, because at the end of the day, there's only one you. This could be true for the men as well. But for women especially, I think you have to remember that. Because the world too often tells us what it is to be a good woman. If it's your mom talking to you, if it's like mine, so your mom talking to you, being a good woman is like, get married, have kids. If you're talking to, your boss, maybe good woman is you have to do all the work, around the company. If you're talking to your husband or whatever, maybe being a good woman is who knows from the bed or whatever. You know what I mean? So everybody's going to have an idea as to what being a good woman is. But at the end of the day, it should matter just who are you. And it's okay if you're trying to find out who you are. Just be in sync with yourself. And I don't know how else to say it. And maybe it's just me and my grandma. When I was leaving Germany to go to Europe, my grandma looked at me and she said, "Baby, you're going to go to that place where no one looks like you. You're going to go to that place where almost no one speaks your language. And you go to this place where kids have been going to school, and you have not been going to school. But she said, you know what? Although they're not going to look like you, because they were white people, and I'm black. And she said, even though they don't look like you, it is just a different skin color, human skin color. They're human, you're human, no big deal. And she said, that language that they speak, it's still a human language. You're human, you're going to be able to speak it. And then she said, going to school is what little humans do. You're a little human, you'll be fine. And Grandma was just like that with me the whole time. And it was true what she said. When I went to Germany, I saw all of these white kids, like these pairs of eyes looking at me like I was some alien. But I didn't let it faze me. And they were speaking this language. I'm like, what is this? And school, I've never been to school. But eventually, I did what Grandma said. Grandma said, no big deal. Because she said, at the end of the day, it's all things that humans are and do. You're human. Whatever they do, you can do the same, if not better. And I believed her. And I didn't let that mess me up. And guess what? After 6 months, I was the best in my class, speaking a flawless German, and just living my best life with my little boyfriend named Jochen. To this day, I will never forget him. He was this blonde, cute little boy, and I'm like, yeah, you know? So that's just what it is. So at the end of the day, the biggest advice is give yourself a break. Live life. Have fun with it. None of us is going to make it out of here alive. Make it count. Make it be worth it. I want, but by the time I am done and that God calls me back by His side, I want to know that because I have lived, another human being has lived better. This is Emerson.
We have some minutes left, so you've been an entrepreneur in different industries. How is AI going to change the way you have done entrepreneurship?
Anybody here who is scared of AI, think again. You've got over AI something that AI doesn't have, and I don't care about the people who say, oh, AI is going to be this human thing. You know, I've been one of these people who, for more than a decade now, you know, when we're just talking about robots and everything, and people were not even talking about AI, but to me, that's all the same. I've always been one of those people who could not wait for robots to come, who could not wait for AI to be here. Do you know why, Juan? It's because I think it's about time that people exercise their humanity. We are here, we're supposed to be these humans, we're supposed to be these very unique things, these unique beings. Do you know what it is to be human? Yet here we are. If we're doing work that a robot can do tomorrow, all the better for the robot. Take it. Take it. Do it. We the humans should not have to be doing all of this hard work. But what we humans crave is, of course, we want to work. But what we crave and what's missing so badly is human relationship. The modern world is sick. It is sick because it is missing human relationships. Think about it. Our technology keeps going. The more technology goes high, and the unhappier people are. Do you know that young people right now have to rely on social media and technology to basically find mates? We're lonely. We've never been this lonely. And with it, all the diseases that are the diseases of loneliness, because us humans are social animals. So, yes, Juan, I want a robot to be at the hospital who will not be the one making the mistakes that humans do when she comes and puts in my body something that's not the right thing or the right time or whatever. Let the robot do that, but have a human being come by my side, hold my hand, talk to me, read to me, be with me. The part that's going to heal me, but no robot can do. So let the robot do what the robot does best, take all the measurements, give me the medication that I need to have at the time I'm supposed to have it, never tired, around the clock, everything, and let the human being right there to work to be with me. If you're a lawyer, put your stuff through the AI, have it spew all types of things, and then use your human brain, because that creativity we have in here, the AI doesn't have it, and I don't care what they say about the AI coming, I still believe that what we have, you don't understand how much we humans compute every single day. It's not just about the data that you get, but it's also about cues. Juan, when I'm sitting here with you, there's something with the robot, it's not, you know, the context the background, the history, all of these things, and even maybe the scent in the air. So much plays into this interaction between you and I right now that I don't think AI is anywhere close to getting there. So I say, if you want to fight in an age of AI, exercise your humanity. Those of us who will be able to tap into their humanity and put it out there, you are going to be the ones who win. I'm already seeing it in my work. We have lawyers that work with AI, but then they're the ones who correct the work of the AI. I have doctors who look at the data that the AI provided back out, and then the doctor uses then his or her mind, but their understanding of me as a human being, to then come up with even better solutions for me. This is meant to be. This is not enemy or anything. Think about it as a tool. But the only way you're going to win, you're going to have to be the human that you were destined to be, and most importantly, you're going to have to be the unique human that you were destined to be. Game over now. No more hiding behind any crap. No more. No more. Embrace it. If you don't embrace it, this thing is going. This technology is not going to be stopped. And I'm telling you, you have everything that you need to exist and cohabitate in a time of AI. I know that I'm having the best time of my life. We're using AI in amazing, unique ways. Some of it, if I was to share here with you, you would be like, she's kind of crazy, but I'm not. We're using AI every single day, and it's just making us better, faster at what we're doing, and eventually we're going to be more competitive. So embrace it. But most importantly, the way you fight AI is going to be by embracing yourself. That's it.
Thank you very much, Margaret. This is a wonderful way to finish a day. Take a break and exercise humanity. It's a great message, I think, to close this conversation. So thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing your experience. It's really inspiring. We definitely hope to have you again in Colombia someday.
I have to say, I love you, Colombia. Thank you so much for the warm welcome.